Great. So we're rolling. LeAndra is back with me. We're going to
Hello.
do a part two of our conversation because part one was so great and had such awesome responses. And I think a lot of people resonated with this conversation of money and how it impacts us in our actions and our feelings and our thoughts. So we don't really have an agenda other than diving back in where we left off. Welcome, LeAndra.
Thank you. It's so great to be back on. And yes, it was. I just want to say you have such an incredible following. Several people from your channel reached out, and they are just the sweetest people. So it was
Right?
fun.
It's like an anomaly. You hear about the internet being this cesspool of, I don't know, anonymous hate messaging and stuff. And that's not been my experience at all. I think the group gathered here, just a bunch of real humans that want to do good and see the world move in a better direction. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's just dive right into the deep end, I guess. My money situation has changed a ton since we first met. And in that last conversation, we were kind of talking about that origin story and just how much, anger and resentment I had. I'm now in a place where I'm doing the things I want to be doing for compensation that is sustainable. And some of the little exercises and things along the way, I think were what allowed me to receive what was coming my way. Um, but it might be fun to kind of do some of those same conversations and poking and prodding that we were doing in the kind of early stages of meeting. So if you're comfortable with it, I could just kind of turn it over to you and see where you want to point the lens of inquiry.
Well, actually, I'm gonna let you point the like pokey thing, whatever's poking you now, and then I'll poke it more.
Okay.
So, what feels like it's poking you in your money right now?
What's poking me? Okay, great question. Because a lot of things are going well. I think,
Ooh, well, hang on. Let me pause right there.
yeah.
This is actually really, really big because with money, we always think that as soon as our money is going well, then every other problem in my world will be solved. And actually, this sounds totally crazy, but I when I did my the beta round of my program that was teaching people just financial skills and setting up their money flows so that their money automatically flowed so they'd start like keeping more money so that it could grow. And the crazy thing was that I had four ladies in my beta round, and at the exact same time, all of their lives seemed to implode all at the exact same time, which I just said that was redundant. I just want you guys to get that it was all at the same time because if it had happened one here, one there, it would have just been like, oh, yeah, that's too bad that that's happening. But it all happened at the exact same time that it got me looking into it. And that's actually how I got really deep into this emotional stuff with money was not when things were going poorly, but when things were going well. And sometimes that's when everything starts to fall apart.
Oh, great.
So that's why I was like,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. What a great
Yeah.
time to jump in so that we can hopefully prevent any life implosions.
Yeah. Let's do that. Um, because I think, what's poking me right now is that I'm in a really great spot compared to where I've been. And I think what's poking me is the knowledge that it could change due to factors that are outside of my control. One of my, you know, larger payment streams is coming from a deal that I was a part of, but I have no control over how long it goes, and I could get information in 10 minutes that like that's gone away, and then I'd be back to the hustle, back to like figuring out how to cover that square. So I'm really enjoying the calm and the ability to focus on the things I want to focus on. But I think that's what's kind of poking me is the knowledge of um, I'm I'm kind of in the clear right now, but it's not like out of the woods or out of the storm potentially.
Right. So if we can go back, and I'm not sure how much you've talked about this on this channel, but you actually had what I would call a financial trauma. right?
Mm.
It's not like capital T car accident type of a trauma, but like the situation that you went through, and maybe you can give us your version of that story of like your previous business. Can you just give us that
Sure.
rundown?
Yeah, I've talked about it a bit on the channel, so I think, regular viewers know. I just invested a huge amount of myself and my energy and my time in a startup that I ran for 10 years. And then, in kind of a capitalist way, some of the investors maneuvered and removed us founders, and I just found myself without anything. I thought that this was going to be what I would retire on. I thought this was what, all my eggs were in this basket. And at one point, we were looking at, a tens of $1 million acquisition of our company, and so we were really close. And then all of a sudden, I was, back to how I felt being out of college with, no money, no respect, no sense of self worth.
So essentially, here you threw all of yourself into this business for 10 years and then just had the rug yanked out from underneath of you,
Yeah,
right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is basically what you're saying about your current money situation is I'm relaxing into the fact that it looks like I can relax because this money's coming in. But what if, just like before, the rug gets yanked out from underneath of me?
yeah,
So that's why I'm calling it a financial trauma, because what happened before, there's now this fear of like, what if that happens again? So even though you're saying I'm calm, there's still this like little niggling probably in there that's like, yeah, but what if?
yeah.
Does that make
And on
sense?
a day to day basis, I think I'm able to focus on the things that are immediate, and so I'm not carrying this fear consciously all the time. But I might be, going to bed at night and then just let out like this huge sigh as my mind like goes down these dark rabbit holes of like, oh shit, like that really could just be temporary, and maybe I don't have everything solved, and what's next. So yeah, how do you, or how might I address that, or
So I
is just
think
knowing it? Yeah.
so I think that the big thing is really one of the big things that I work on is actually feeling our emotions. And in our society, we talk about overcoming fear and conquering fear and being
Mm.
fearless and feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I actually try to unwind that, and I'm unwinding it for myself. So you might still hear me say things like that because I haven't quite completely embodied it either, because it's very very pervasive in our society. So like I'm unwinding the same thing for myself. But what I found is that it's just really helpful to lean into the fear and let it have a voice. So I use tapping, and I think we talked about this last time. It's the emotional freedom technique, or EFT, and it's using acupressure points. It's scientifically proven to reduce the fight or flight response, nervous system response. So the fear response. So if I was leading you through this, and maybe we can just do this right now, I would let you lean into the what ifs and just let them go wild while tapping. So if I started
Yeah.
you, just tap with me.
Let's do it.
All right, take a deep breath and let that fear go wild. What if? And you run with it, and I'll just tap with you.
Do you want me to actually say the thoughts?
I do, because I have a feeling
Okay.
that's actually going to resonate with other people. So the first one would, if
Yeah.
I was going to do it for you, what if this happens again?
Yeah.
What if I put all this effort into it and it just gets yanked out from me again?
Yeah. I think the thing that's running in my mind is like, what if I'm not as safe as I think? And what if that means I'm not as smart as I think? And what if, even though things are really good today, that just might make it even harder when things go to shit again and I'm back scrambling? And then that makes me fearful of like the opportunities and things that I've said no to. Like, was I a fool for like turning down paying work with X, Y, or Z, person or opportunity? What if that's what I really needed to do instead of focusing on art and these things that I think most people think are trivial? And then, I mean, going even deeper, it's like, what if things really go off the rails again and I'm back in that place of relationship tension and family tension and just the shame of being at my kid's karate class and we're like ducking out early because we know we have to pay and we like can't afford it until we get paid again, and just like the shame that comes from feeling inadequate or unable to be an adult. Yeah, I didn't know we were going to go this deep so soon because I was like, yeah, LeAndra, I'm kicking butt. But I think that's also the fear. Like, what if the economy changes? What if the world changes? What if, the rug is pulled out of all of our feet? What if bread goes from being $9 a loaf to $18 a loaf, and then it's, a completely different economic environment?
And
I
that
guess
really
it's
boils down to
yeah.
what, and we talked about this last time. What if I can't provide for my family, right? Especially for males in our society, the message is you are the provider.
Hmm.
What if you can't provide? Then that means that means I'm.
Less, something less than a man.
So let's just take a deep breath and pause right
Mm.
here for a minute. You can keep tapping if you want because we're bringing this all up for you. But
Mm.
all of this, everything that you just said, is what's running underneath, right? We started this conversation by saying everything's going great right now, LeAndra. It's summertime. Kids are around.
Yeah, kids are in.
but but when we realize like underneath everything's going great, all of these fears are still running. And I just find that again, when we say just make the fear go away, just make the fear go away, just make the fear go away,
Mm.
it doesn't go away. But when we can actually name it, and that's why I really like the tapping because it is bringing down that physical response to it. We give it a space, we give it a voice, and then it's kind of like like it's letting the 10,000-pound gorilla out of its
Yeah.
cage. And really all it wanted was the banana over there.
Yeah, actually, in a tangible way, I was in one of these moments of like, oh crap, what if I'm not as set up right now as I think I am? Because that contract that I just mentioned, like, it could go away. So it's funny because I feel like I don't want to be asking the question like, can I rely on this? Because I should just be able to rely on this or anything else. But I got to a point where I did just reach out, and for the company and the party that was through, just like, is this like a long term thing? Like, is this going away anytime soon? And I got an answer back, and it allowed me to like get a clearer picture of what to expect. And I think my old imprinting would have just like, it would be almost a sign of weakness if I had to, really ask and make sure that that base was as covered as I thought. And it was braver to just be like, oh, if that changes tomorrow, then I'll fix it. I'll deal with it. Because that's been my way of doing business for a long time. I call it lily padding. Because before the business I was talking about, I was a freelance creative, and so I always, I was either working a big project or I was looking for one, but I never let myself really think about what that next thing was. I just had faith that, oh, when this one's over, yeah, it's like a lily pad. I'll just be like free falling in the air, and the next lily pad will come up, and then I'll land on it, and I'll be cushy and safe for a little while. But then, eventually I'll have to jump or it'll sink. But it was easy to live that way in my 20s. It's a lot harder now with a family, and so I think you're spot on.
Yeah. So how does it feel? How do you feel now that you've kind of, how do you feel now that you've voiced all that?
I actually feel surprisingly good because I wasn't expecting to go there. You know, we started off saying, you know, I'm doing great. I've really internalized a lot of these, I don't know, accepting the gifts of the universe and a lot of that kind of high level positive stuff. But that's almost superficial if I'm not acknowledging this undercurrent.
And that's really what our society says, right? Like, just do it anyhow. Forget
Yeah.
about the fear. Just do it anyhow. And what I find is that, and I've just been reading Kristen Ulmer's book, The Art of Fear, and she says
Hmm.
instead of overcoming fear, you're overcoming the situation.
Hmm.
And I think that that's really big. Like turning to fear and saying, what is the message that you have for me? Because one of the things that I really believe is that there is no bad emotion, which in our society, it's like jealousy is bad, fear is bad, anger is bad, like all these things, you shouldn't feel them. But really, they all have a message for us. And the one that I love that I've heard before is anger. The message in anger is this is unfair. And if you
Hmm.
take anger to the next level and call it rage, rage turns into outrage. And outrage, then, when it's constructively used, turns into courage, which is
Hmm.
the courage to step up and change something that is unfair or right or wrong. So, really leaning into all emotions, good or bad, then we have the ability to move forward. So instead of this, like, everything's going good, I'm good, everything's good, we're good, everything's good. And then, like you said, you lay down at night and it's like, oh shit, but what if it's not good? Are we allowed to say that on here? Like, I always say that my internal voice must have been in the Navy in the past because it curses like a sailor.
Yeah.
Like, I don't talk that way. That's just my internal voice. But you lay down and it's just like, oh my god, like everything seems good, but what if? And so instead of like, shut up, what if? It's like, okay, just let the what if have its voice so that you can sleep because fear never sleeps. It's going to wake you up in the middle of the night if you don't listen to it while you're awake.
Hmm. Yeah, and I love what you just said about anger. We talked about that last time because that was my initial response when we met, and I think it's you who has said it a couple times that in our culture, anger is the emotion that men are allowed to feel, or we just have like a disposition towards moving to that, especially publicly. Some men are better than others about showing sadness, but anger is something that can just kind of come out, and the idea that anger is maybe not the greatest emotion to act out. If you're angry at someone, you don't want to just go and punch them. That's not that's not constructive. It's just going to land you in more trouble. But that anger is like a compass. It's pointing you in the direction of something that is really important. And I like that idea that it's also culturally a constructive tool that can be, cumulatively, if we're outraged enough about things, we're actually going to take action. So anger's always got your back, even if it's not comfortable or um, pleasant, even.
Yeah. And I'm like, I had so many things to say when you were talking about that. When we were talking, the thing that flared anger in you, or that you felt anger when we were talking last time, was the unfairness of capitalism, right? Like when you got angry, it was really because you were like, capitalism isn't fair, and this isn't fair, and I think the words that you used was preying on people's vulnerability isn't fair, right? So there was a lot of you, and you didn't say unfair, but like unfairness was the
Yeah.
thing underlying your anger.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny because that brings up a lot for me because I don't know that I would use fair because capitalism is inherently unfair or disproportionately the advantages go to a small number. And that's been the case since the beginning of capitalism, and a lot of laws and what the government does is to separate the workers from the means of production. That's like a core principle. So I don't know that it's the unfairness just as much as the disappointment that that is the set of rules that we've all been given, and it feels like we don't have anything to do except play that game, even as that very system seems to be showing, cracks in the seams. Hadley, baby, I need some space. You can go find mom and she can help you, but I can't help you right now. I'm sorry. My only hour out of the last month of not like 100% kid focus. They don't know
Yeah,
what to do.
got it.
Um, yeah, this would be a fun place to go into because I do have some anger here, and it's not even conscious. It's just this base outrage that somehow we've allowed corporate interests to create a system where we are all separate from each other. Like a community's resources are separate into these silos of personal finance, personal homes, personal cars, personal everything. And so we're weakened as a tapestry of people, and then we're given these monolithic places to go for our food, our clothing, our transportation, and that is really sad to me. And the business that I've been talking about that I ran for 10 years, it was called Community Funded. And our whole vision, our whole purpose was to use technology to help communities use their resources more effectively and to allow a community to have that conversation with itself saying, what do we think is most important? And letting members of that community raise their hand and say, I have an idea, and let people come and directly support it instead of, here in Colorado, they're building like all of these Amazon distribution hubs that are these gigantic, big, boxes that are so impersonal. But that's what's putting all the little stores out of business in Old Town. And even from like a social media perspective, I see all of these artists and everyone's in competition for attention, for um, sponsorships or whatever. I mean, there's this girl that I was listening to on a YouTube channel. She was an artist, and she's like, "My video is going to teach you how to make money as an artist." And her whole thing was just about social media. It was how to make, promotion ads on social media. It was is this attention economy, and that's what really, when I talk about capitalism, it just makes me angry that we aren't in conversation about what our community actually needs, and we're willing to put all of our attention and our money in places so far removed from our community that it never comes back. It's just an outflowing. We're like all sitting here with this drip IV that's taking our very blood and life energy and putting it in the interests of, I don't know, Jeff Bezos' spaceship so we can escape planet Earth when it's finally frying. And meanwhile, there's just a lot of suffering that doesn't need to happen. So there's my little soapbox, but that's when we talk about capitalism, it's not just like I don't want to go to work. It's like fuck, the jobs that are available are just feeding this beast and I don't want any part of it.
Okay, so you said I'm outraged, but we
Yeah.
have to make a shift for that to move into courage to do something about it, right? Because it doesn't do any good for us to just stand here and be like, this is stupid, this is dumb. We actually have to do something to change it. So here's where I would tap, but I don't want to jump in because you said that you wouldn't say it's unfair. What would you use as your languaging? Or I thought that's what you said. Maybe I misunderstood you.
Yeah, well, you just really painted it in this lens of fairness, which I think is kind of a core tenet of your just kind of psychic makeup. Is I think you've had to work a lot harder, maybe as a female, maybe as the daughter of an immigrant, or like there's a lot of unfairness I think in your story. I feel like I've always had an advantage as a educated white male. Like it's actually this capitalist system is really skewed for someone like me. Like I can and have excelled here,
But for
but
me, listening to your
yeah,
story, I still hear you saying it's still unfair. Like it's unfair that the Jeff Bezos gets to get to use the feudal system to make sure that he can get his rocket ship out of here when the time comes.
it's not just that it's unfair. It just creates an environment that is full of a lot of unhappy people, and that's sad to me. And I think there's a lot of social dysfunction that's happening, and it's happening out of an intention that I think are coming from these capitalist interests.
So will you humor me for a minute?
Sure,
Will you go with the unfair word?
sure.
Okay, so let's just tap on it. Let's take a deep breath and say, it's so unfair.
It's so unfair.
This society is so unfair.
This society is so unfair.
It's so unfair that, and now I want you to take it from here.
It's so unfair that people aren't treated equally in this game. It's like playing Monopoly, and depending on where you were born, the color of your skin, the gender you are, so many different factors, you're dealt a different starting hand. And the ones who have been dealt the best hand have just used it to leverage more and more and more control and power, so that everything is a predator relationship. Healthcare is completely predatory. Education is being moved more and more towards privatization. Everything that I see as far as business models or things online are just leveraging people's pain and their attention to make money. And it's unfair because not everyone is benefiting from the same flows of energy, but it's just sad. It's sad to be with people who are working extra hard in a game they can't win, thinking that's how they're going to get ahead. And it's hard to see the divisions in people who should all be on the same team, because we're being pitted against each other instead of against the forces that are actually taking the lion's share of everything. And yet we're squabbling about all of these little, you know, trivial concerns that divide us. And I can zoom out and I can see the big picture, and I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong, because it's just what the earth is doing, and it's what humans are doing. I think it is that anger that I did try and do something about it. Community funded was a way to try and do something about it, and it ended up in the same capitalist garbage pail, because the interests that were investing money and just wanted a return leveraged their power to get what they wanted, and they crushed a beautiful dream that was already doing so much good in the world. We raised hundreds of millions of dollars online for all kinds of community gardens and startups and education, and in the end it all ended up in that same garbage pail.
And that's
Yeah.
not fair.
And that's not fair. You're really leaning into this fairness, LeAndra. I want to see where you're going with it.
I'm just having you acknowledge it, and that's not
Hmm.
fair, right?
That's not fair.
This is actually coming back full circle, even to where we started with everything's going great. I have this money coming in, and now we're coming back to community funded, the small t
Mm.
trauma of capitalism. And it's not fair. Like I was trying to do, I had taken that outrage, I had turned it into courage, I was doing something about it, and then capitalism still came in and squashed it, and that's not
Mm.
fair.
And crypto. This channel, all of these people are here because I was talking out about this exact same thing, just in the crypto space. That the powers that be that have the most money and influence are constantly leveraging that to take from people who already have next to nothing. And I stepped into this space. I've got this little YouTube plaque on the wall. That means I can click a few buttons and start just extracting money from this audience that I don't deserve. And that was a huge battle for me, especially when we first met. Is like, okay, I showed up at the table and they said, okay, this is how you get ahead. It just requires that you don't care who you're hurting or what you're saying to them, or we'll pay you, we'll feed you if you're going in line with these interests. And I have been ruthlessly unwilling to do that, and I've suffered for it. But I'd rather suffer with the
But I
people
was
that
going to
I
say,
align with.
that's not fair.
And it's not fair. Sure, it's not fair. Yeah, when my first video went viral, I could have put affiliate links in my description and had hundreds of thousands of dollars, just coming my way. But what would that have been doing? And that, in a world that values or seems to value, that tells you it values the cars that you drive, or being able to take your family on trips or post beautiful pictures on Instagram or whatever, it seems like that is what we should be seeking, is just the personal benefit at the expense of others. And that's not fair to anybody. Wow, we're having a therapy session here now. I like it.
You said we were going to do a real
Yeah.
session. So. So, if we take a deep breath into this, and I always try to bring it back to where we started, it was everything's going fine. Everything's great. Everything's fine. And like I said, when everything's going great is sometimes when everything just starts to implode. And
Hmm.
so this really shows you there's the what if fear piece. Then there's still this anger piece of like, I've been doing good in the world and it still gets squashed, and that's not fair. So then, and you even use the words, I don't deserve it, right? I didn't
Hmm.
do anything to deserve it. And that is a big piece of devaluing yourself. And I'm not saying right or wrong in this instance of like having affiliate links for something that you absolutely don't believe in. Like for me, I'm kind of a health nut. So having an affiliate link to McDonald's would be like, no, because it
Yeah.
goes against my beliefs completely. Right. But, but if it is something that you believe in and you're connecting the person who has a solution with the person who has a problem that wants it solved, you're a market maker and that has value. So even that would be something that deserve goes in there too, because if you did agree to make money that way, that would be something that you would subconsciously implode your life because you're like, I don't deserve this money, even though that's what supermarkets do, that's what banks do. Like they make the market so that we don't have to be like, hey,
Hmm.
I have sheep, you're looking for buffalo, let me go barter these sheep for 5 different places till I can get to a buffalo to get what I need from you.
Hmm.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
and not excuses making, but this is what I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out for months and months and months and months, where it's like, holy cow, this YouTube thing, my ship seems to be coming in. I just don't know how to get on it in the right way. And so, yeah, those McDonald's type affiliates, they're coming out of the woodwork. They're throwing themselves at you. The ones that I actually align with, I'm reaching out to them and saying, hey, like, here's who I am. Here's what I'd like to do. And here's what I'd like in return. And just, I haven't, none of those have moved forward or had responses. And it gets to the point where it's like, well, is it worth putting in this energy to try and connect this thing backwards from how it wants to be put together, versus what I've done is just take the energy that I was putting towards YouTube and those things, and now this is where I say things are going really well, because I have an art studio now, and I'm in this place where I can just sit and listen to music and paint and make art and share that. and energetically that feels like it's more aligned with my values, my interests, my passion. And I think it's not about like helping people, it's helping me just feel connected to my community and involved with people. And I think that was just the decision that I had to make is, do you keep trying to hammer the round peg of virtue through the square peg or square hole of capitalism, or do you just see that for what it is and move on until you find a more energetic fit?
Okay, so let's tap on this part because I think this will bridge us.
Nice.
So when I say bridge us, we've named what we call the negative, right? We've named the fears, we've named the anger, and then in tapping, I like to use a bridge to the positive side. So then into where we would like to go. So let's just use this art and community and this piece, and I'll just lead this one, and you're
Okay.
welcome to jump in and interject or change however you see it fit. So take a deep breath. It's really important to me
It's really important to me
to be able to create a positive impact in the world
to be able to create a positive impact in the world
while at the same time providing for my family.
while at the same time providing for my family.
And I don't really want to follow the unfair rules of capitalism,
And I don't want to follow the unfair rules of capitalism,
even though they work in my favor,
even though they could work in my favor.
or yeah, especially because they do. I don't know. They
But
could work in my favor. But it's really important to me
it's really important to me
to make a positive impact in the world.
to make a positive impact in the world.
And right now, I don't know how to do that.
And right now, I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to use my viral video
I don't know how to use my viral video
to make a positive impact in the world
to make a positive impact in the world
while also providing funds to my family.
while also providing funds to my family.
The current model doesn't work for me,
The current model doesn't work for me,
and I've tried a different model,
and I've tried a different model,
and it hasn't worked yet.
and it hasn't worked yet.
And here comes the bridge. But I'm open that it can.
But I'm open that it can.
I'm open that it is possible
I'm open that it is possible
to make a positive impact in the world
to make a positive impact in the world
and be able to make money in a way that feels good to me.
and be able to make money in a way that feels good to me.
I might not have found it yet,
Might not have found it yet,
but I've been trying pretty much my whole life.
but I've been trying pretty much my whole life.
And while sometimes I just want to give up,
Well, sometimes I just want to give up.
this feels like my life's purpose.
This feels like my life's purpose.
Does that feel true?
Maybe. I don't know how yet.
From the outside, I'm like, this is what you've been doing your whole life.
Yeah,
But I'm open to it.
I'm open to it.
I'm open to it.
I'm open to it.
There's a way.
There's a way.
I just haven't found it yet.
I just haven't found it yet.
But I'm open to new ideas.
But I'm open to new ideas.
I'm open to meeting the right people.
I'm open to meeting the right people.
I'm open to using my lily pads in a different way.
I'm open to using my lily pads in a different way.
That the lily pads might get me closer to this way.
That my lily pads might get me closer to this way.
Because I really want to believe
Because I really want to believe
That it is possible
that it is possible
to make a difference in the world
to make a difference in the world
while at the same time making money in a way that feels good to me.
while at the same time making money in a way that feels good to me.
All right, take a deep breath.
Hmm.
How does that feel?
Yeah, it does feel like I just opened up a channel and it's kind of just pointing into the air, but at least I'm like looking through that frame so that I could maybe see something that's coming with that receptivity as opposed to just the, hard wall of no to everything.
Right, right, exactly.
And I wanted to share this because before I was telling you before we got started, I just happened to have this notebook on my desk here, and this was from one of the first weeks of the money game, and it was, who have I cast money as? Like, what character does money play, or what role does it play? And so my initial drawing was this like wish granting fairy godmother, who can buy you toys or adventures or whatever, but is actually being controlled by this evil, behind the scenes puppet master. So it's like, yeah, you can have all this bounty, but there's strings attached. And what I want to believe in, how I want to recast money, is as this like sacred energy, life giving patron saint of creativity, where I can just go to it and say, here's what creative thing I want to do next, and it will provide the resources and the opportunity. And I think the capitalism, all of the things that you just had me kind of saying, I'll look at it, I'll look at it. I've cast those as the Grim Reaper posing as a fairy godmother.
Right.
And I like that idea of, so long as my intention is what I'm focused on, which is, it doesn't have to be positive. I'm not one of those people who sees like black and white, good and evil. Like, I really think that all of this together has to be just as it is for us to have anything. So I'm not out for some righteous crusade, even though it might sound that way. Um, However, I think that my intention of saying I want to share these ideas or these images or these relationships, if I'm coming from that, then I can start receiving from a, yeah, that sacred patron of the arts, and maybe it is coming through an affiliate link on a video for something that I am okay with, but I don't have to cast everything as it's working against me or there's like a trap involved. Oh, I think I might have lost you.
Okay, while I was on my break checking my
Yeah.
internet, the thing that I really realized that you and I both have in common, and I think our people have in common, is that we're really looking for a way to make money in a way that feels good to us. And whether that's like having a job for a company that you actually believe in, or that's starting your own business and finding that way, I think that that is, and even the couple of people that I talked to who reached out from here, it was the same thing. It's like I want to make money because I need to make money, but I want to do it in a way that feels good to me and is in alignment with my values.
Yeah, and what do you think about that? I mean, in a way, that's a luxury. I almost see it as first world problems that, with the crypto garden, I was exposed to people from all over the world who are literally hustling just to eat. And it feels like kind of a luxury to say, well, I'm going to be really discerning about where I take money because that's a reflection on me. And clearly I'm more enlightened or whatever than to take money from McDonald's. So,
It's true.
yeah.
It's true. I mean, it's absolutely a luxury. And I think so. My opinion on staying poor to stay in solidarity is you can't be poor enough to make somebody else wealthy.
Hmm.
Like you can't be unhappy enough to make somebody else happy. Um, and so I think that the whole, to me, the whole privilege, unprivileged conversation is if you have privilege, use it to help those who don't. So if we are creating corporations that people can work at and feel good about making money, then we are changing that path.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that collides with my trauma though because that's what I did. And then
Yes.
it worked for a while. I think I did factor it up and it was like 150 jobs over the course of 10 years that got created. And people, I still talk to some people that say the team that we had was unlike anything they experienced anywhere. Like it was so bonded in the willingness to do hard work because the belief that it was truly important. So maybe that was just a time and a place, and there's little pockets of that happening all over the world. And if you're fortunate enough to be inside of one, that's awesome. And if not, that's okay.
I would actually say
Mm.
from the outside looking in that you're the exact right person to do it again because just like the quote goes with Thomas Edison, he didn't fail 10,000
Yeah.
times. I know I've been having the same thing. He didn't fail 10,000 times to make electricity or the light bulb, whatever. He found 10,000 ways that didn't work. And so now what
Mm.
doesn't work. So from my standpoint, I would want to enable you to work through that trauma. I'm like, let's do maybe not live, but let's do a financial trauma session so that you can start to see the story
Mm.
differently. It's not that you make up the story, it's that you forget details that were there because you've been telling the story one way for so long from the trauma that all of a sudden, when you reduce the trauma response, you forget really important good things that did happen and you end up retelling the story. And then it can feel like, okay, I'm ready to try this again because you are, of all the people, the one who knows how to build something amazing. Like you just said, you know how to build a team, a place that people want to work, something that feels good. And you also know what not to do the next
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
Whereas if I started that, I'd be starting from scratch and I'd probably make the exact same mistake or worse.
You don't know till you try.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean that's really timely too because I have thrown my hat in the ring with two other or three other individuals that I adore, and we are working on another business, and we have all had some reflection of a traumatic story in the past or a startup or this that the other, and so we're very aware of what we want and what we don't want to create. So I think that's the good news is that what you're talking about, and probably, and actually, I know through the money game and work with you, a lot of the conversations that have led to this next little business that I'm co-founding, I've been able to preemptively address concerns and bring up things. The week where we were just like making a mess, when the money game challenge was like, just fire off that email, just say the thing you want to say, just don't feel like you have to do everything perfect, just make a mess. A lot of stuff got worked out with this team. So yeah, I I'll go back, full circle to say it's not like the dog in the flaming room who's like everything's fine. I feel extremely grateful that the hard work and commitment that I have had to figuring these things out has yielded fruit in what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, how I'm feeling, who I'm interacting with, where I'm putting my energy. It feels very much in line with what you're talking about now, and probably in part because of the instruction that I've had from you and others in the past to reframe these stories that I've just told myself over and over and over. And yeah,
Well, and the word of caution I would bring into that is like you're saying, you're bringing 3 to 4 different people who've been through their own traumas and they bring that trauma together. The crazy thing is that we will keep recreating that trauma
same thing again. Yeah.
to work through it essentially,
Hmm.
right? It's sort of like the universe keeps sending you the same message until you learn the lesson.
Hmm.
And so I would say before you all come together, that each of you works through this trauma so that you're not bringing that together. And then each person is unconsciously sabotaging the company that you're building to heal from the past trauma. Like heal the trauma and then go
Yeah.
forth. So otherwise, I mean, it's just sort of like how the abused becomes the
Hmm.
abuser, right? It's kind of that same context in a much smaller, like I said, not a capital T, but like a small T trauma kind of way.
Yeah. We have our first meeting in a couple weeks tomorrow, and I'm going to make that an agenda item. Let's talk trauma, and maybe we'll be sending some people your way.
That'd be awesome.
Speaking of which, and as we wrap up, where can people find you if they want to have a one-on-one or learn more about what you do?
Definitely. My website still just leandrafoster.com. And we do have a new money game coming up this fall. So there is pre-games coming up, as you've said, like it's to make it fun, but we're also doing the deeper work. And we'll put the link in the chat when we have that.
Cool. Yeah, link is in the description. And that's probably a good place to wrap it up. But it is my intent to continue these conversations with you. I think it's, I mean, yeah, for coming in not knowing what we're going to talk about, this just felt like the exact right thing. And I really appreciate it. And I hope it resonates with others out there. And yeah, I really appreciate you and
Absolutely.
what you do.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to your summer day and talk to you soon.
Sounds great.
Cheers.